Unique in all the world for its unparalleled scenic beauty and its fragile wolf-moose relationship, Isle Royale is tailor-made for the most adventurous explorer, and yet it's within easy reach for anyone who has a little bit of time and a thirst for adventure. Whether it's a week-long backpacking trip that you desire or a chance to catch a lake trout from the depths of 100 feet or more, Isle Royale has it all. 4 days on Isle Royale and a chance to experience a national park that few people make the journey to see.
In Lake Superior's northwest corner sits a wilderness archipelago, a roadless land of wild creatures, unspoiled forests, refreshing lakes, and rugged scenic shores, accessible only by boat or float plane. It's a land of enchantment, nature in all her moods of peace and violence, an island of mystery and scientific exploration, the world's largest freshwater lake, and the site of over 4,000 years of human history. Isle Royale is the largest island in Lake Superior, about 45 miles long and 9 miles wide at its widest point. It occupies about 210 square miles. The highest point on the island is Mount Desor, 794 feet above lake level and 1,396 feet above sea level. Early in this century, Isle Royale became popular for summer homes and was used as a wilderness retreat. Detroit journalist Albert Stoll sparked the fight for the national park status in 1940, and in 1976, the park was designated part of the Wilderness Preservation System under the Wilderness Act. It was going to be the adventure of a lifetime for Mike and Wes. 4 days at Isle Royale and the chance to experience a national park few make the journey to see. After a night of rest and relaxation at the beautiful Keweenaw Mountain Lodge, Mike and Wes found themselves up with the sun, anticipating the early start to Isle Royale. In Copper Harbor, the 81-foot-long ferry Isle Royale Queen III, or Queen 3 as she's called, would soon be loaded with people and gear for the 4.5-hour trip to the island. Early the next morning, Mike and Wes were prepared to do a little exploring. The plan was to take a rental boat and motor to the far end of Rock Harbor and see some of the sights along the way. Armed with a map, a lunch, and a thirst for adventure, the two set off from Rock Harbor Lodge bright and early. The shoreline of Isle Royale and its smaller islands is as wild as it gets. Spires of spruce, balsam fir, and white-trunked birch trees find purchase among these rocks, presenting a beautiful northwoods feast for the eyes. One expects to see a moose browsing along the water's edge or glimpse the tail end of a wolf slipping into a spruce thicket. The next stop was one both Mike and Wes were looking forward to. Somewhere just ahead was the ancient Siskiwit copper mine. We soon spotted the mine tailings and pulled up to shore where we noticed fresh moose tracks in the sand. Maybe we'll see more than just the mine. A small, inconspicuous trail led up over the tailings to a wooden railing, and there, straight down, was the old copper pit, now filled with water. As we stood there gazing into the dark, amber-colored water, we could imagine the native Indians chipping away the sedimentary and indigenous rocks that held the copper fissure. Exactly when and where Native Americans first recognized the attractive properties and natural distribution remains obscure, but archaeologists agree that based on the presence of copper tools in habitation sites of that age, copper was widely used in North America by at least 3000 BC. While no site on Isle Royale has been dated to that antiquity, the 1400 BC date for mining is consistent with radiocarbon dates from both mining and habitation sites found elsewhere on the island. After spending time at the Siskiwit mine, we didn't think things could get more interesting, but by now, we weren't betting against it, especially when the next spot to visit on our map was a place called Cemetery Island. What we found there amazed us. Motoring up to the island, we noticed the small pier with the sign Cemetery Island marking it. The rocky, brush-choked shoreline gave no indication as to what the island was hiding. A faint trail wound up the bank and disappeared into the woods. We followed carefully until finally, deep in the forest, under a shadowy canopy of birch, were the grave sites of early Isle Royale pioneers from an age long ago. Moss and lichens clung thickly to the wooden fence that surrounded the wood slab head markers, nearly obscuring them from the casual observer. The dates of birth and death carved into the headstones revealed short lives and suggested an existence of hardship and misfortune. We stood silent for long moments, watching the sunlight play across the wooden markers, and felt a sense of compassion for the souls left here in their final resting place. We quietly left this somber scene to the wind and shadows of the forest and retreated back to the beach. Islands of rock seemed to be everywhere we went. Inviting coves beckoned us to beach our craft and investigate further. This was just one such spot. Scrambling up through the rocks and trees that grew precariously to them, we were treated to new and exciting vantage points. This was the south end of the aptly named Rock Harbor. Hull-grabbing, immovable rocks lie in wait everywhere, some just kissing the surface, some forming complete islands. A little further south, perched out on a point, is the Rock Harbor Lighthouse, and as we carefully negotiated the shallow waters, the lighthouse came into view. Modern copper mining during the late 1840s led to its construction to guide ore freighters to the island. The station includes a 50-foot brick tower with an attached stone dwelling. When the Isle Royale copper veins were exhausted by the 1870s, mining activity ceased altogether, and the Rock Harbor Light was closed permanently in 1879. Restoration work has been done on the structure, and it's now open as a museum. It seemed like around every bend came something new and interesting to see. And so it was when we came upon the Edison Fishery. This quaint fishing outpost looks like an authentic fishing camp because it is.
Well, this here, nobody really knows where it really started. But there's been about 3 different families, generations right here. In other words, this Edison didn't build it. As a matter of fact, her dad operated this, and he came by and married her, and they stayed in. So nobody really knows how it started. But I would just about guess that it maybe didn't even start at a fishery. Most likely, When they built the lighthouse, for instance, in 1855, I think it is, well, this was a logic place to land material here. You know, most of it, or to store stuff, because of the kind of weather and everything. So maybe they started just a building and a dock or something, and then the fishermen took over after they built the lighthouse.
For anyone with an interest in the old way of fishing with nets and small boats, the Edison Fishery is a treasure trove of artifacts. Les gave us the full tour, showing the boats that were used out on Lake Superior and the cotton nets drying on the racks. In one building, Les showed us all the extra nets carefully folded with all their attached floats. The older floats are made of wood, while some of the more modern ones have gone to plastic. Fishing paraphernalia lay everywhere, most in ready-to-use shape if the need ever arose. While lake trout like this don't come along every day, the Edison Fishery is here every day for visitors to see. We were mighty glad to have Les available for our tour. As they say, he's the real McCoy. Many of the campsites found on Isle Royale have a scenic beauty all their own, and Daisy Farm is no exception. Just up the trail from the beach, we found this little stream tumbling over black rocks just as they have for centuries. As much as we would have liked to break out our camp and stayed overnight, we needed to head back to the lodge. We have a big day planned for tomorrow, looking for moose and hiking to Greenstone Ridge. The ride back to Rock Harbor Lodge was a smooth one. It gave us time to reflect on the raw beauty and solitude that can be found on Isle Royale. It also gave us time to ponder the mysteries of man's impact on the island, such as the Edison Fishery, the Indians who mined the copper, or the spirits of Cemetery Island. Had we been able to visit Isle Royale at the turn of the century, we would have found it quite different than the one we see today. Instead of the possibility of seeing wolves and moose roaming this island, we might see a herd of caribou or catch the glimpse of a lynx, neither of which is found on the island today. The forest undergrowth would be thick with American yew rather than thimbleberry, and since the turn of the century, the coyote and white-tailed deer have come and gone as well. It has been said that a bad day on Isle Royale is better than a good day most anywhere else. And while that may be true, there was little doubt that the fair skies and warm weather were adding considerably to our enjoyment on the island. Today, Mike and Wes would canoe across Tobin Harbor to a trailhead that would take them to the top of Greenstone Ridge and several overlooks. Hopefully, the trail would also take them through some suitable moose country, and just maybe to a moose. By the time Mike and Wes arrived at the dock, several people were already there, getting ready for the trip across Tobin Harbor. Where was everyone going this morning?
He naturally floats.
There was an air of excitement as the canoes were loaded with fishing gear, cameras, and sack lunches for the trip across the harbor. As everyone got safely underway, Mike and Wes stowed their gear in a canoe and started out. That water sure looks inviting, but we'd have to warn you, although the air feels warm, the water is cold. In fact, there was still snow and ice on the more protected north side of the island. Still, it didn't look like we'd be needing warm clothes or rain gear today.
Perfect day. Third perfect day we've had.
Paddling across Tobin Harbor was an absolute delight, enhanced by the sounds of loons and songbirds. Tiny islands seemed to float on the water's surface and beckon to be explored. Looking over the side of the canoe, you could see every detail of the stony bottom through the crystal clear water. Tobin Harbor is a narrow fjord-like harbor that is separated from Rock Harbor by just a narrow peninsula of land. Numerous islands dotted the harbor, some still with the remains of old fishing camps on them. These were the only clues of human habitation we saw. Those canoes stashed up on shore must be close to where the trailhead to Lookout Louise would be found. We'll check it out. After stowing their canoe safely on shore, Mike and Wes strapped on their packs and were ready to go. The trail to Lookout Louise heads nearly straight up from Tobin Harbor. From our park map, the distance looks to be not over a mile or so. But the trail is uphill most of the way, and there would surely be switchbacks, so we'd better get started. Sometime early in this century, moose immigrated to Isle Royale, probably swimming from Canada's mainland. With an abundant food source and no predators, the moose population grew unhindered. During the cold winter of 1948 and 49, an ice bridge formed between Canada and the island, enabling a small pack of eastern timber wolves to cross over to Isle Royale. Since then, additional packs have become established as offshoots of the original pack. As if on cue, this cow and calf moose stepped out to the edge of the lake and went straight to the mineral lick. And before long, they had some company of their own. It's amazing to think that the only thing that separates these moose and the folks fishing on the other side is a few yards of water. Don't for a minute think you can approach too close, though. They say there isn't anything more dangerous than a cow moose defending her calf. They are wild animals and therefore unpredictable, so don't let their docile manner fool you. Just enjoy them from a distance and let your telephoto lens bring them closer to you. We knew there'd be more opportunities for seeing moose here later in the day, so we continued our hike toward the top of Greenstone Ridge. The trail to the ridgetop was as scenic as we could have hoped for. Dense stands of spruce bearded with moss lined the trail, while boardwalks protected the swampy bogs where the trail crossed them. And then there were the smells, those pungent, spicy Northwoods fragrances that always beckon us to linger a while. Soon, the trail turned rocky, with large boulders strewn about, the trail winding around them. As we rounded this particular twist in the path, we came across this pinnacle of stone jutting vertically from the earth. According to our map, this was Monument Rock, which is actually an ancient stack left over from old lake levels and is still standing, weathering the forces of nature. We tried our best to find a way to the top, but after careful study, decided it would be much healthier to admire it from below. Farther up the trail, we came to this marker. Looks like we're heading in the right direction. Without a map to gauge your progress, it's sometimes difficult to know just how far you've hiked. By checking a map from time to time and comparing it to the various landmarks you come by, you can estimate your progress fairly well. Soon, Mike and Wes neared the top of the ridge, and as it topped out, they were treated to this outstanding vista of the north side of Isle Royale. It was definitely worth the hike.
Wow. There's a view. They told us back at the park service station that this side of the island was steep escarpments, and that the other side was more gradual. And they're right. This is virtually a drop off here, and it's supposed to be a mirror of the Keweenaw Peninsula, and it's just like it, only better.
We loosened our packs and just stood there, admiring the view. Canada was easily visible to the north, as were the many channels, harbors, and islands of Isle Royale. Looking out over the escarpment made us realize that if one didn't have a boat of some sort, you'd miss seeing half of Isle Royale. With that very thought in mind, a number of visitors on Isle Royale brought a kayak with them. We learned that a kayak might just be the perfect way to see the other half of Isle Royale, as they are fast, seaworthy, and, perhaps just as important, fun. Back down in Rock Harbor, somebody was always paddling a kayak around. In fact, we never saw a shortage of people waiting their turn to try the sport. With models that have enough storage to stay out several days or longer, a kayak could be used to circumnavigate the entire island and explore many of the smaller islands, coves, harbors, and bays. On this trip, the chance to try a kayak made believers out of more than one die-hard canoeist. While looking at all the islands and narrow channels, we thought how nice it would be to have that kayak. But alas, we were landlubbers today. But that isn't all bad either. With over 160 miles of trail that lace Isle Royale, there's plenty for the hiker to see and do. From right here at Lookout Louise, you can hike the Greenstone Ridge to Windigo on the other end of the island. Several trails along the way intersect the Greenstone Ridge Trail and lead to other interesting places. Campsites are found along the way, so you're never far from one when darkness arrives. We snapped a few more pictures before reluctantly hitting the trail. It was a difficult place to leave. You might know Mike and Wes would forget their sack lunch that the good people at the Rock Harbor Lodge had packed for them the night before. So it was time to get out the old backpacker stove. Lucky for us, Wes had some leftover freeze-dried food still in his pack. Having your own stove for boiling water and cooking is always a good idea, and not just in case you forget your lunch. When camping, having your own stove helps protect the environment from the danger of wildfires, and you don't have to find natural fuel, which can be in short supply. In just a few minutes, Wes had a meal ready, and we were ready to eat. It may not have been as tasty as the food the lodge provided us, but with that backdrop, who cares? We figured late afternoon would be a good time to catch a moose at the Hidden Lake Mineral Lick, and so off we went again for Hidden Lake. We were either right or just plain lucky, because the mineral lick at Hidden Lake had bulls, cows, and calves coming and going. The moose had really moved into the area since earlier this morning. Everyone we talked to today was having the time of their lives. Perfect weather, perfect setting, and doing the things they enjoyed most. As much as we hated to admit it, it was time to head back to Rock Harbor Lodge. We weren't the only ones trying to stretch this day out either. Several canoes glided in across the glassy waters of Tobin Harbor in the waning hours of daylight. It had been another perfect day on Isle Royale. Nothing lasts forever, and our stay on Isle Royale had come to an end. It was time to return to the Keweenaw Peninsula, the mainland, and back to our families, jobs, and deadlines.
Isle Royale is made up of scenic coastlines, historic lighthouses, pristine lakes and streams, and moose hooves in your hiking trail. By boat or by plane, people come here to get away from the real world. We hope you enjoyed our Isle Royale special, and we hope that you have an opportunity to come here in the near future and discover this island for yourself. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.